Hey guys, it's Steve. As this episode comes out October 24th, 2019, I want to give you a heads up on a great event that's going to be happening in the Detroit area for anybody who lives around the Detroit area on November 9th this year, 2019. And it's going to be a charity event for Give Kids the World. If you don't know anything about Give Kids the World, it's just a great charity organization that helps kids in need actually visit Walt Disney World. And it's being put on by a good friend of our show, Chad Pennycuff, over at mydvcpoints.com. He runs the My DVC Points podcast. It's a great podcast focusing in all about DVC, buying DVC and whatnot. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you go over there and check it out. And he is putting together, and Christy I think might be involved with this as well, on November 9th, they are going to do kind of a cyclothon at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And all of the money that it costs $25 to reserve a bike, and it's going to be a lot of fun kind of cycling and getting some exercise to Disney songs. You know, you can work at it as hard as you want, but the entire $25 for your bike reservation is going to go to Give Kids the World. And then on top of that, Northville Cycle Bar is going to match that $25. So that'd be $50 for every bike that they fill up. I'm going to put a link in the bottom of this show in the show notes for you to go to check it out. But I highly recommend, if you are in the Detroit area and can be part of this and want to give back to Give Kids the World, it's just a great organization. And Chad's just an amazing individual over at my DVC Points, and being able to support him and support Give Kids the World, it would be a great thing if you're in the area. So once again, it will be over in the show notes, or there'll be a link for it in the show notes. Look for it down there. And let me see. It looks like it says www.members.cyclebar.com/book/cyclebar Northville. So that will be in the show notes. Look for it there. And if you can make it and support that, that would be awesome. Well, now on with the show. Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise smarter. And I'd like to welcome back to the show our co-host, Christy Puttick from PackYourPixieDust.com. How are you doing this morning, Christy?
I am well. How are you, Steve?
Not too bad. And we are continuing kind of our series. I think we're going to just have to call it a series because we've had so many people, so many big Disney Cruise Line fans kind of venture out this past summer and take cruises on different cruise lines. And today I'd like to welcome back to the show Chris. His family was with us on the Fantasy this past spring break. And I'd like to welcome Chris to the show. And you guys sailed up to Alaska. How are you doing today, Chris?
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Christy, for having me back. Yeah, we had a great time, and we did Alaska on the Norwegian Bliss in late June, and had a great time.
Great.
And actually, I wanted to say I saw you guys hit your milestone of 100 episodes recently, so congratulations on that. It's been a fantastic ride, and thank you for all that you guys do.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. And I'm really excited to talk to you about, I think Christy and I are both excited to talk to you about the Norwegian Bliss, which is the cruise ship you guys sailed on, because we kind of followed her as she was being made over in Papenburg, Germany by Meyer Werft, and then we kind of followed her as she did her first sailings last year up to Alaska, so I can't wait to hear your thoughts about this just amazing ship. So to kind of jump into it, just give a quick background of some of the Disney cruises you've taken before we jump into this Norwegian cruise.
We've done two so far. Our first was 3 years ago on the Magic. It was a Caribbean cruise, 4-night Caribbean cruise, and that was our first time getting our feet wet. My family, my wife, me, and our 4 kids. And then more recently, we cruised with you, Steve, on the Fantasy to the Eastern Caribbean on a 7-night.
So 2 just amazing Disney cruises, and this summer you guys decide to switch gears a little bit and go with Norwegian up to Alaska. Kind of talk about your thoughts as to why you picked the Bliss in Norwegian this time.
Sure. Like you said, it was in the news a lot, and it's a beautiful ship, and it's custom made for Alaska, and we can talk about that a little bit. So it's certainly on my radar, but just having had such great experiences with Disney and looking at Alaska, and that Disney DCL just seems to be a great way to see Alaska. We were torn, and so we knew both would be good options. But ultimately, and I'm gonna have to thank/blame Christy for this, because it was one podcast when you were talking about concierge and the lounge. I think especially on the Dream class ships, the Dream and Fantasy, where you could get up in the morning and you had your own private concierge lounge. You didn't have to be all made up. You could just kind of walk out, grab some food, and it just sounded like such a great experience. So I looked at that on the Disney cruise, but of course the Dream class ships don't go up to Alaska. I think they sail the Wonder up there. So I looked at what would be comparable on the Bliss, and they have the Haven, which is similar in some ways, and they have their own lounge. And I thought that would just be a really great, easy way, especially with a bigger family like ours, so we wouldn't be all on top of each other. And so ultimately we said, we're going to try it. It's a little different. It's not geared quite as much towards families, but it certainly is family friendly. So we thought, let's give it a shot and try something different this time.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about this.
Now, wait a minute. I want to go back to a comment that you made. Is that how you roll, Christy? You just wake up, you don't make yourself up, and head into the concierge lounge?
Yeah.
I don't know if she said all that.
Here you can have an inside scoop on me. My son typically wakes me up, like my husband is still sleeping. He rubs my back, or if I'm sleeping, or in the bed, he just walks up and says I'm awake. And I throw on pants, you can get the whole story, and we sneak out of the room. Well, we put shoes on. We always got to wear shoes. And we go across to the lounge. That is literally what we do.
I just had this vision of you with your slippers on, sipping your coffee with Blake in the concierge lounge, but I digress.
Yeah, except that I put shoes on, but that is what happens. Chris, can you tell us a bit about what is included in the Haven, and then also what type of room you had? So whenever order you want to do that in.
So the room we had it's called the owner's suite. It's a 2-bedroom, and when they say one is really the large one, the master, and the other one's a smaller entertainment room, but it has a full bed. So 2-bedroom, and then a very large living room with a pull-out sofa, and then a very sizable deck that wraps around the front to the side of the ship. So good sized room. The Haven, I'm trying to think of everything it comes with, but some of the benefits are it has its own pool, own hot tub, a sun deck. It has a private restaurant, which the food is fantastic, and we can talk about that more later. It has concierge desk where they help with probably a lot of the same things Disney concierge would, booking shore excursions, booking restaurants, making sure you get into the entertainment and shows you want to. They will make sure there's, seating for the shows. They have a sectioned off area. They had first disembark for shore excursions. They would take you out to be the first ones off. The room, this sounds a little silly, but the room comes with a butler, and I really did not know what that meant.
That is not silly. That is awesome.
Well, I read the description, and the first thing said, the butler helps you from day one. They'll unpack your clothes. And I'm just thinking, no, I don't want someone.
I don't know that anybody's ever used that feature of any butler ever.
No, and everyone said, no, that doesn't happen, nor do you really want it. Maybe someone does, but we did. So that didn't happen. But that said, to the extent we really felt some magic on our ship, it was the butler. We really got to know her. Her name was Lanny. She got to know our kids by first name. She would stop by a few times a day. Every afternoon she'd bring us some food and treats. The service was just fantastic, and it was in large part to her. And then she teamed up with the room steward, who was fantastic also. I think I read that NCL was going to stop towel animals unless you request it. I could have that wrong, but so we talked to our room steward. We said, we still have some younger kids. Can you do that? Well, he took that to heart. He, first night there was an animal, but he said, if you save them by the end, you'll have a lot. Well, by the third night, he was bringing in 3 or 4, and by the end, we had just a menagerie, a full zoo of, it was like Noah's Ark, and we just kept them all, and it was fantastic. But the service was great. The Haven is definitely, a very special experience, and they really bring the magic, and we were very happy about it.
And then for our listeners, the Haven is offered for all suite classes. So there's lots of levels of suite as long as they are a full suite. So there are mini suites that are not included in the Haven.
Talking about concierge too, Chris, did they reach out to you ahead of time before the cruise to help you plan your cruise, or was it more once you got on board that you did everything?
But, that's a great question. They said they would reach out ahead of time, and this was the one place I was a little disappointed. No one did, and I saw some of the things that they were supposed to be checking on, and I had to take some steps to reach out to them, and they said, oh, it'll be fine, and honestly, everything was fine once we were on, and everything was great. But ahead of time, they said they would reach out 45 days ahead of time, but they didn't in this case, and I'm not sure why. I think it just slipped through the cracks.
Did you have any problems once you got on board as far as booking the things that you wanted to do?
No, and it's interesting. Some things you could book ahead and some you could not. But once we were on, everything seemed to open up for Haven guests. If you wanted to get to a certain restaurant or make sure you got to a certain show, there was a lot more of ticketing and making sure you got to the entertainment, unlike DCL, where I think most of the shows you just walk in, and as long as there's room, which there usually is, you're fine. This shows could sell out. I don't know if that happened, but you were ticketed for certain events.
Well, let's talk about the cruise itself then. The Norwegian Bliss cruises out of Seattle. And why don't you talk about who went on this cruise again, and we'll kind of go over the itinerary quick and talk about getting to Seattle.
Yeah, so it was the six of us, my wife and our four kids. They are our daughter and three boys from ages 8 up through 15. Yeah, we flew into Seattle actually 2 nights early so we could have a day in the city. I've flown through Seattle countless times, but I've never actually toured the city, so we were glad to do that. We did all the touristy things and had a great time, and it's a great city. But we stayed at I think it's a Marriott. It's right across the street from where the Bliss comes in, so we could literally wake up that morning and just walk across the street with our bags no more than 100 feet and then hand them off to the porters there. So it was a very easy to get from the hotel over to the ship.
So talking about walking over to the ship with your bags and stuff, how was embarkation process for you guys?
Yeah, embarkation was great. Before that, they do split off the Haven guests so they can get on sooner. But even before that, very similar to what I had experienced with Disney, the porters are there. You have your bags tagged. They take them. You go through similar security. And once you're through that, though, then they split off the Haven guests. So I didn't get to see what just the normal embark would be. But they have a separate lounge for Haven guests with food and some beverages. And we didn't wait more than maybe 20 minutes. They gave us the lowdown and they brought us on the ship. And so that was fantastic. And actually, I like researching, so I'd watched people had posted lots of videos of all this. And so by the time we got on, I started recognizing the people. And I was like, wow, I've seen you. You're famous. And they all just thought that was hilarious. I mean, a little weird, but, they're like, I didn't know. So I was like, oh, yeah, you got to check it out. So really nice. The one thing that it wasn't a big deal, but when you're on Disney, most of the cruises, and I guess there's some exceptions, but you tend to go into the big lobby area where it's 2 or 3 stories high, and you feel like this is the hub, the center of the ship. And when you get onto the Bliss, you sort of come along the outside and you walk a little bit along past some of the lifeboats before you go in, and then you just come in next to an elevator bank. So you're on the ship and it's beautiful, but you don't really feel like you've hit the heart of the ship before you really get into the rest of it. So not a big deal. You have plenty of time to explore, but you don't get quite that same feeling as you do getting on a Disney ship. For us on the Haven, they brought us up to the Haven Lounge. They would bring people in as they showed up. So there were maybe 15 of us at first, and they bring us into the big lounge in the Haven. And the head concierge greeted us all, told us a little bit about what to expect, and then said, you're free to go explore the ship and do what you want. So it was a good, easy intro and nice to be on there early.
Was your room ready when you guys first got up there then?
It was not. Okay. I think they said maybe an hour and a half until it would be ready. So one of the things they did is they said it'll be lunchtime soon. You are free to eat at the Haven restaurant, which is very good. And we ended up eating, I'd say, most of our meals there. And we can talk about dining more, but there are some restaurants where you pay a little more to eat at them. And they said one of them was a Jimmy Buffett's Grill. And they said because of the limited availability right now, that is included for lunch for Haven guests. So it's not going to cost you more. So we sent our kids over there to try it out because it wasn't going to cost more. And my wife and I got some quiet time, sort of the calm before the storm. We just stayed at the Haven restaurant, which was great. But we were a little nervous about sending our kids off on day one on a new Japanese ship, but it was fine. And actually, our concierge walked them over, checked on them for us, and gave us periodic update. I know. I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be great. So they were all fine. She said, can they have soda? She'd come back and ask questions. And so that was kind of entertaining to us. And so, it was a good, easy setup.
So this is a cruise kind of similar to Disney's. Of course, Disney's out of Vancouver. You guys leave out of Seattle. You have a day at sea. You got a Juneau, Skagway, Glacier Bay for your cruising, back to Ketchikan, and then you stop in Victoria, and then back to Seattle. Let's just go back to the ship just real quick one more time. What were your guys' overall thoughts? This is the second year that it's been sailing. What were your thoughts of being on a Norwegian ship and comparing it to a Disney ship just overall?
Sure. It's first off, it's an absolutely beautiful ship. If anybody gets a chance to do this cruise or any cruise on it, it's definitely worth it. My first thought, just because the Disney ships are so familiar and the layout is somewhat similar, I was completely overwhelmed. I didn't know where I was. There's so many more restaurants, and the way it's laid out, a lot of the restaurants sort of face inside to the common area where people are walking by. So just as you're walking around, you just feel this energy of people are in restaurants and bars. And so you kind of have this focus that, unlike the Disney ships, the focus on the NCL ship was very much, we have all these different restaurants, come experience in them. And so I think that had a different feel. A lot of the entertainment was sort of out in the open as you would walk past it. So just a different feel in that sense. There's, similar, the buffet is up near the top off of where the pool is. So the pool got busy pretty early on, as I think people were expecting not to use it as we sailed up north into Alaska. There is a casino, as I think there is on most non-Disney ships. It wasn't a big deal. We weren't gambling, but if you didn't want it to be part of your cruise, you really barely noticed it. And they had the smoking sections are walled off behind glass doors. So I heard,
oh, good.
Yeah. I hear that's a complaint for a lot of people. Oh, there's so much cigarette smoke. Didn't notice it at all. I think they said the ventilation in those was really good. So for the smokers, they probably had, good experience. And then you could walk by those casinos and really not pay a whole lot of attention to it. So it wasn't central to the ship, but it's definitely there if people wanted to spend some time in the casinos. One other nice thing I really liked, they have something called the waterfront. A lot of the restaurants, they sort of face on inside to where the main hallway is between them and where people walk by. They also, if you walk through the restaurant, they actually face outside and have some outside dining. So the waterfront is this maybe, quarter mile length that you can walk along outside the ship. It's sort of like a boardwalk where you walk past people dining at various restaurants. So it really feels like a boardwalk, and it's just kind of a nice design feature that, our weather was so great on this whole trip. We spent a lot of time just walking around out there, and you can get a feel for the different restaurants. There's, a bar that was supposedly Liverpool where they had a Beatles cover band, so you could walk by and hear them playing. So that was just a really, I thought, a well thought out design. The other two unique things, or fairly unique, were the laser tag, which they had up top on the ship, and then they also have a go-kart track, which was very cool. And I think they had that on one other ship, but I think this is their biggest go-kart track, and definitely a unique feature to go do that at sea as well. So we did that a few times throughout the cruise.
And then, was any of that included as a Haven guest, or was it an additional charge for you as well?
Yeah, no, it was a charge for us as well for the go-karts and the laser tag. I think I heard very originally they were included, or the cost was relatively low, $5. But I think the demand is so high for both of those, especially the go-karts. The price has sort of creeped up. I think it's at least $10, and the go-karts might be a little more. Don't hold me to that. It's probably likely to change. Just the demand was so high, and they were so busy that was not included for us either, and there was an extra charge for those.
Well, let's turn to the food then, since you talked about so many different restaurants. I know with Norwegian, we've sailed with them before. You have the option of doing packages before you leave, as far as dining packages, drink packages, and whatnot. Was any of that included with the Haven, or did you have to purchase those separately?
Yeah, similar thing, I think. And you always have to read the fine print. I don't think we got something special because we were the Haven. Well, that is to say, they usually have 5 free offers, and maybe you can pick 2 of them or 3 of them. And as Haven guests, we got all 5. The only thing about it is, and I'm sure Christy as a travel agent can tell people about this, things aren't always free. So there was a free drink package and free dining, but
you have to pay the service charge.
Yeah, you still have to pay gratuity. So it doesn't mean it's a bad deal, but it means you need to calculate that in. So for us, the drink package didn't make it worth it. If you weren't going to have more than 2 drinks a night, then it wasn't going to make sense to buy the package because your gratuities would probably exceed that. For the dining, though, we bought a couple of the specialty restaurants because the gratuities on that was fairly low compared to what we would have paid anyhow. So we did the dining. We did not add on the drink package.
And then to note, I believe the dining is only available for the first 2 guests in the room.
That's correct. Yep. And then it's going to be the adults also. So yeah. So we only got that for my wife and me. So what we did, we actually went out for kind of the same way as we would have done Palo on Disney. We went out to an Italian restaurant for our free credit dining. Not free, but included when we pay the gratuities, I should say.
Talk about your experiences with the food overall. Then, which specialty restaurants did you eat in, and did you eat in the main dining rooms as well?
Yeah, we did some of both, and because we were in the Haven, our default was the Haven restaurant, which the pros and cons are it's right by our room. We never had to wait, and the food was fantastic. The cons are the menu never changed, and so as long as you were happy getting what they had, which we usually were, you weren't going to get variety there. So we did most of our meals there because of the convenience, but we did think we wanted to branch out and try some of the others as well. I'm trying to think, there are so many restaurants, and so such a focus of the NCL, or at least on the Bliss, were all these different restaurants. And so from a very high level, the included restaurants for everyone are their buffet. They call it the Garden Cafe, but probably similar to Cabanas at Disney, except that it's open for all meals. I guess on Disney, Cabanas is open at dinner as well. This was one of the main dining places for people. And one nice thing about it is it faces the forward. There's a very large 2-story lounge for sightseeing in Alaska. And this buffet comes out above the top level of that. So if you get seating towards the front of that buffet, you're going to get these amazing sweeping views of Alaska. So food there, I thought was absolutely fantastic. And some days I was happy to leave the Haven restaurant where the food was very good to go get the buffet. The variety was good. The quality was good. It got busy, definitely got very busy, but I would put it on par with anything I had on Disney as well, just because I thought the food was excellent.
That's promising.
Yeah. The other 3 included restaurants were Savor and Taste, and I think they're pretty much the same menu. They're fine, they're solid, and if you want to sit down dinner, they were a good place to go. But I found that the service tended to be a little slow at most of the restaurants, so I was just as happy to go get what I wanted at the buffet. And then they have another included restaurant, which is the Manhattan Room, which, as far as I can tell, they serve the same food as the other 2, but it's a little more formal. It's not, you don't have to get dressed up, but I think it's if you want a slightly more, oak covered restaurant type experience, that would be where to go. I think they probably had some nice tablecloths and that, the whole experience. And then the last one, not sure it's quite in the same boat, but it's called The Local, more of a kind of a pub burger kind of place, which we did not eat there, but I heard it was very good and solid food. So you really had good options, and if you didn't want to pay for any of the specialty dining, you could eat very well, I think. And my only complaint was just after trying any of the restaurants, the service always seemed a little slow, but I guess that's one of the downsides when people can show up whenever. So as opposed to Disney, when you get a time, they're Norwegian's freestyle dining, you sometimes are going to have to put up with waits, and that's just how it was.
I like the idea of the buffet being on the front of the ship, especially up in Alaska. I mean, what an amazing, opportunity to sit up there while you're eating lunch or whatever else and really take in that scenery, going forward rather than backwards, like where most of the buffets are.
Yeah, no, I think they really thought it out so well. And that was when they say the ship is custom made for Alaska. I think that is that observation deck and then where they put that buffet is such a big part of that. I think they clearly put a lot of thought into how the ship should operate and how it's going to run and how that experience is going to be for the guests.
Well, let's move on to entertainment. What were some of the things that you guys got to see and do while you're on board the ship?
Like Disney, they had a lot of family games throughout the day. So instead of being in the lounges, like as is pretty common for Disney, a lot of them were in this atrium open area where there are a lot of chairs people would pull up. But so a lot of the similar things, quizzes and, how well do you know your family type thing. And so those were fun. They were very easy to just drop in whenever you wanted. I don't think they necessarily were any better than Disney. I think some of the personalities they have on Disney were so good, but on the Bliss they had young, energetic people who really got adults and kids alike involved and engaged, and so there were a lot of those throughout the day. And so we definitely stopped by some of them. We tried some other things that probably weren't quite as geared towards families. We saw they had some comedians on the ship, and so we thought that'd be good. They had earlier and later showings. The earlier showings of the comedians were the family-friendly ones. We didn't go to the later ones, but I'm guessing they were maybe a little more geared towards adults. The family-friendly one that we went to, in my thought, really wasn't all that family friendly, and the quality was fine, but we didn't want to go back to more. I'll just say we didn't feel like we really wanted to go see the rest of the comedians after that. So that was too bad, because I think that can be an opportunity for everyone to get together, have a lot of fun, and it might have just been the one in particular we saw. There were some others that we didn't see, but so be it. There were a lot of other things to do on the ship. One of our favorite experiences was they called it an escape room. You weren't really in a room, but it was hosted one of the mornings in one of the lounges that they cleared out and opened up all the space. And they put you into teams, and you had to figure out various riddles and puzzles, and ultimately you had to, quote unquote, escape by, figuring out the puzzle and giving an answer at the end of it. So that was just a lot of fun. We did have to get tickets for it, and I think it sold out. So that was one thing that you would have to plan ahead if you wanted to get in on that. But definitely something we enjoyed. The last big entertainment thing I'd mention are the shows, because they have a few shows, and they are not necessarily family friendly. One you actually had to pay more for. I forget the fee, but you had to pay a little more for it. And so we didn't do that one. And the other one, I think it was Havana. We had heard mixed reviews of it, and we didn't hear that it was necessarily kid-friendly, so we took a pass on that. The one show that they really highlight a lot is Jersey Boys, and they said, it's Broadway quality, so come and see it. And there's some language in there that's not quite as kid-friendly, but we prepped our kids, and we said, this is supposed to be the really good show, so let's all go see it. And I was wondering how the quality is going to be on the ship. I got to say, it was absolutely fantastic. The show was great music, high energy, and the quality of the singers was just fantastic. So I'm really glad we went to see Jersey Boys. Such a good show. But that was the one big stage show that I definitely would recommend people get to if you're going to be on the ship. Don't miss that one, because we really all enjoyed it. And we introduced a whole new era of music to our kids as well. So that was kind of fun. They're like, who are these guys? And I'm like, no, they're really a big deal. So yeah, that was fun. And then the last night or second to last night, I mentioned there was a Beatles cover band who played in one of the bars that was supposed to be modeled after the bar in Liverpool where they all started out. They did a show in the main theater the last night where they just played the greatest hits, and so we went to that as well. And man, those guys, not only were they fantastic, they were just the spitting image. I mean, you just thought, that was John, and you're like, that's Paul. Like, it just looked like them. So they sounded like them, and so it was really cool. You didn't have to suspend your disbelief too much to just feel like you were experiencing the Beatles. So that was some really fun entertainment as well that everyone could go see.
Did your kids enjoy the music?
Oh, yeah, they definitely did. Probably more so the Beatles, because they were more familiar with those songs. But yeah, they got into it, and definitely good quality music.
It's amazing how that music is timeless. Did they have a Cirque show on board by any chance? A Cirque dinner show?
Not that I saw. I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, let's turn to your kids then. You talked about, your kids being on board. What were some of the things that they did? Did they go to the kids clubs, or what were some of the things that they enjoyed doing?
Yeah, they all did the kids clubs. And actually, it's funny, Steve, after we did our Disney Fantasy in the spring, our kids didn't use the clubs a whole lot. And he said, guys, you don't have to. They're there for fun. And, if you don't enjoy it, then you don't have to go. But, I think they just had trouble making friends and meeting new people. So he said, guys, on this one, just make a little bit of an effort. If it ends up not being enjoyable, then that's okay. But this time, just make a little more effort and get into it. And man, they take that to heart, because they made friends. They'd be walking around the ship. They'd be like, talking to these kids. I'm like, how do you know these people? And they're all buddies. So especially our younger two, they have something similar to the Disney Kids Club, where the theming is obviously different and not quite as extravagant as Disney, but fun, bright areas, and the counselors were great. They had games and competitions that were timely and kind of poked fun at social media and all of that. And so the kids just had a blast. They had music trivia, and our kids like, we knew this, and so the counselors got to know them all by name, and so they really did engage them more, and they had a really good experience. One quirk for the younger kids club, so my 8 and 11-year-old, they said the older ones, that they were old enough to check themselves out. They said they could not check themselves out until they had been in the club for 2 hours. And so that was kind of weird, because, we were used to Disney where, if they were 8 or older and you gave them permission, they could go in and out as they wanted, as I recall. But it was a little bit of a pain, just because if our kids said, hey, if I show up and nobody I know is there, they're not doing something fun, I might want to head out. And I said, that's fine. And they said, no. You, the parent, have to come check them out unless it's been 2 hours. Then they can check themselves out. So I'm not sure why it ended up not being that big of a deal, but just kind of a weird quirk that people should know of as you're putting your kids into the clubs. But overall, the quality was good. The counselors were a lot of fun. There was something, all the time, but particularly in evenings, they had fun games and contests for the kids to get involved with.
That's really good to hear.
No, on some cruise lines, the kids clubs closed during the meals. Was it this way on Norwegian?
I think that's right. Don't hold me to that, but I remember thinking, they closed them at, I want to say 6 or so, and then they didn't reopen again till 8, or maybe it was 5 to 7. But I feel like at least the scheduled programming was done during dinner time, and I think it probably was closed. And I remember them opening up again later in the evening. So that was accurate. And so they would start up with the programming again afterwards. But there might have been an option to pay more during that time, or we didn't pay more to use them, but I don't think so. I think you're right that they were not open during dinner time.
And what about lunch?
It's a good question. I don't remember. I think our kids weren't there at lunch as much, so I don't think they were closed, but I could be wrong about that. And then one just tip for the teen club, one of the days or nights, I should say, the teen club activity is laser tag, all included. So if you're on the ship and your kids like the laser tag, send them that night, because they're not paying more any other time. You're paying for it. And so that we did send our kids, like, go play laser tag, because it's free or included at this time. And so they did. And just something to think of if your kids are on it and they really like the laser tag, good time to do that.
And I won't hold you to this, but what do you think the overall demographics of the ship was? Alaska used to be generally an older crowd. That's been changing. What was kind of the makeup of the crowd on the ship when you guys sailed?
Yeah, it was such a mix.
I guess, was there a lot of kids on board?
Yes, there were a lot of kids. There were a lot of people who were, probably just there without kids and having a good time. Either they were, they haven't had kids yet, or maybe they were, getting away from their kids for a little while. So there's kind of a group maybe like, in their 20s and 30s, and they probably had the drink package and they were living it up. But then you had, some parents who were maybe in their, 50s or early 60s who were just, presumably they were on their own. But then there were definitely kids. And then the cool thing I saw a lot of was a lot of intergenerational trips. I saw a lot of grandparents, kids, and grandkids together. And that's one of those things. When we picked Alaska, we were thinking, what's good for all ages? What do adults like? What do younger kids like? And it was so great for everyone that I can really see that being a good intergenerational destination, because the ship is fun, the sites are great, and there's high energy activity things for people who want to do that. But if you also just want to take it easy and enjoy the food and just see things from the ship, you can do that as well. So it was really a good mix. And my impression of cruises all came from, well, probably like the Love Boat in the 80s, where and I'm like, well, that's what cruising is like, and and it's not. But that was kind of this picture I had in my mind. Well, it's the elderly, they have fine dining every night, and I know it's really different, but it was a real mix on the demographics from what I could tell.
With the kids, was there a way to communicate with them while they were running around the ship?
Yeah, that was somewhat of a challenge because, one, we didn't really know the ship, and then two, our room came with, I think there were 2 phones, sort of like the Wave phones, but they were just kind of big and clunky, and just like the Wave phone, I never really wanted to carry it around. So the short answer is there wasn't a great way to communicate. So we did a lot of old school, let's plan on meeting, somewhere at some time. Now, they do have an app, and the app has messaging in it, but first off, it's $10 a person or $9.95 a person. And so, I can kind of be cheap sometimes, like, oh, we're not paying for that. We can do without it. And after a few days, my wife and I just looked at each other. You're like, this is a pain. We don't know where our kids are. They, if they're somewhere, we want to let them stay or know what they are. If we get to send a quick text. So we I said, fine, let's just pay for it now. So we're not like doing it the last day. So, get the benefit of our $9.95. So we got it for my wife and me and our 2 older kids. Unfortunately, it didn't always work well, or on the iPhones, the alerts didn't always pop up, and sometimes they did. So it was sort of hit or miss. I think it was helpful. I wouldn't say it was super reliable. So I still felt like we had to plan ahead. Hey, kids, we'll try to text you through the messaging app, but it may or may not work. So, keep opening it, keep checking it to see if we've messaged you.
So Disney has the Navigator, which is sometimes in paper form now. Did they have something like that on Norwegian?
Yeah, so I don't think it was because we were Haven. We got something every single day. I think it's the Freestyle Daily or whatever they call their Navigator. But so we had the paper in our room, and actually we'd get it the evening before or afternoon before. They'd say, here's tomorrow's Freestyle Daily that had all the activities, and so we got that. And then, as you alluded, the app also had all of those things in there. It worked, and if you spent some time with it, you could find the information in the app. But that's one of the reasons I really like the paper. I think an app just can't replicate, the big grid where you can kind of look at the different times of day and where things are and what venue they're in. It was just much easier to do on paper, but that information generally was in the app. The app also had, you could check, your balance, reservations for restaurants or entertainment. And so all of that would appear in the app. It could be useful. I wasn't always feeling confident that it was getting updated regularly in terms of our reservations, but for the most part, it worked, and it was a helpful tool to have.
See, World and Disney, the app and the paper can be useful together. We don't need to get rid of the paper.
So I got to throw Disney a bone here because, so much on different podcasts I listen to, they're always talking about how bad the IT is. And that was kind of our experience when we were on board the Getaway up in the Baltic, Chris, as far as using the messaging system with Norwegian. I remember several times sending a message and it got to our friends 2 days later. So,
oh no.
But to be fair, Disney is not always 100% on top. Like, we've had times because, my mom would be on the cruise and have our son, and we're trying to get a hold of her, and the alerts don't pop up on the phone either. So it's awesome that it's included, for one, and it's like you've already paid for it. It's prepaid. And it's awesome that they have it in general. So I'm happy to have the app, but it does not always work perfectly either.
No, I'm with you there, but I'm just saying my overall, especially using the messaging service of it, was much better on the Fantasy when we just used it this last spring than on the Getaway. But I agree with what you guys said. Having both, using both kind of helps you kind of navigate your way through the cruise.
Yeah, no, I think it's the Disney from the 2 times I went, it just improved from the first to second time. And, Norwegian's probably doing the same, making the app better. The only gripe, and it wasn't a big deal, is that we paid for the messaging. And if we pay extra, then you kind of want it to work pretty well. But it is what it is. It didn't really hurt our trip.
But that's the theory too, right? Like, Disney has a bigger price tag. You're paying for the soda whether you drink it or not. You're paying for that app whether you use it or not.
Yeah.
So,
And that was, definitely the feel. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but we loved our cruise, but there was definitely a feeling of, I wouldn't say nickel and diming, but Norwegian looked for more opportunities to charge you for things along the way. But like you said, you probably paid for less of it up front compared to Disney. So for instance, sodas were not included. So you could pay for them by the drink, which was very expensive, or you could get a soda package. But they just, and maybe that's just how they set up their structure, that they're going to charge you a little less up front. And if you want those things, you can choose to pay for them later. But just when I'm on a vacation, I don't like to feel like I'm paying more as I go. But I think that's just a personal preference.
Did the escape room cost more money?
No, that was included.
Okay. So Steve and I kind of get into arguments about this. I don't know if argument is the right word, but I say Norwegian charges you a lot more for random things than even the other mass market cruise lines like Carnival. And he's like, that's not true. And so I always like to get an idea of what does cost extra because, like I said, we argue about that all the time.
No, it's a good question. Yeah, that was included. Most of those were included. There was one that you paid more for. I don't remember off the top of my head. Most of the entertainment was included, but yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Yeah.
So the laser tag is extra unless they're doing it through the kids club. The go-karts are extra. Did you guys do the go-karts?
We did. Yeah. We gave all of our kids a chance to do it. I want to say got up as much as $15. It might have been 10 or 12, but I gave all the kids a chance to go ahead and try it once just because, that would add up with 6 of us if we kept doing it.
Right.
Well, anything else about the ship before we turn to the main reason why you go to Alaska, the ports themselves and the scenery?
Yeah. No, I think we covered the high level, but yeah, if we come back to anything, I'm happy to talk about the ship more.
So how did you guys decide what you wanted to do in each one of the ports? Did you talk about it as a family ahead of time? Well, obviously you did, but how did you guys do that?
When we planned, I mostly just worked. My wife and I would, look at the different ports and figure it out. We've just found with 4 kids, nobody all agrees on anything, and so there was just no point in trying to open it up to everyone. We know them pretty well to figure out what they'd like. So our approach was, and we really like planning. I know you've talked about it on this show where some people just want, a travel agent to take care of everything. We really enjoy that planning process and researching. So we started not looking at what NCL offered. We started by just looking, TripAdvisor and Cruise Critic, just looked at each of the ports and said, here are the types of things that you can do there. Which one sounds the best for our family? And so we really approached it that way. And then if any of those lined up with excursions that the cruise line offered, then we could do it that way. And if not, then we would go do something on our own. And that was our general approach.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of like trying to order a pizza when you got 6 people. Everybody's got a different opinion, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know what? Nothing good will come from that. And someone's feelings get hurt. Let's just not do that.
So there you are. You're off to Juneau. What did you guys have planned and what did you do?
Yeah, that was one of the things that we all wanted to do, but my wife in particular really wanted to do whale watching. And so that was an easy one because that's one of the excursions that Norwegian offers. I think most cruise lines probably do. And so we did through Norwegian one of the whale watching tours, which was great. We were really hoping to see some orcas. We did not, but there were plenty of other humpback whales around, and saw them breach and got some great views. And most of those they guarantee you're going to see the whales. And I'm just thinking, I'd never been up there before. How can they guarantee it? But I think they just know where the whales are. They know how to find them. And that part wasn't too difficult. It's just, how much of a show are the whales going to put on for you? Because I think they know people around. And so that was a great tour. We, got off the ship. They took us on a bus ride. I forget the length, but maybe 20 minutes, not that long. And then they took us around for, I want to say maybe a 90-minute tour. I forget the exact length. And then brought us back. And so we didn't get into Juneau until afternoon, so that was pretty much all we did there. I think we walked back part of the distance through the town to look around a little bit, and the town is fine, but I think compared to some of the others, Juneau was fine, but the whale watching was definitely the main event for us on that port.
How was the ship that you guys were doing the whale watching on? Like, how many people did you feel like you had enough room as far as being on the balconies, being able to see the whales and whatnot?
Yeah, we did. At first, we saw, there's a limited number of seats, and I'm trying to think the number of people, maybe 100 people. I'm bad at estimating exactly.
That's okay.
Yeah, that general, so it wasn't super small, but it wasn't massive. But once we got to one of their stops, they opened up the top balcony, which is a full 360 view, and then people got up and wandered around. And then by that point, there was plenty of room to get around. You really didn't feel like you were missing a view, because you could get up on the right side wherever you wanted, wherever the whales were. So there was plenty of space to get around, not too crowded. And they had refreshments, hot chocolate, snacks, and things like that. So easy for the kids, easy for us, and just a great intro to Alaska to see one of these amazing things, see these whales, which are just beautiful. So that was a good way to start off our first excursion.
I think this is the fourth. I think everybody went to Alaska this year. I think this is the fourth or fifth show we've done about Alaska, and only one person has said that they saw orcas, so they're tough to see up there.
I know. Yeah, that's too bad, but yeah, that's kind of why they're why they're so cool. They're just not as common. So it's a big deal when you do see them.
Yeah. So from Juneau, you're up to the little mining town of Skagway. What did you guys have planned there?
So for Skagway, we really hemmed and hawed back and forth, because I think that's the big excursion there is the train. Mm-hmm. And we almost did that. We ultimately did not. We ended up going with a private van tour that went up into Yukon territory. And I think our thought was they largely cover the same ground. You get slightly different views, of course, but we just liked the idea. The van went a little further, and we had a guide who could stop and help us find things. So, we did see, we saw a bear along the way. We hit some other places to see, we went up to Carcross in Canada and had lunch up there. And so I think, we could have gone either way, but we did that van tour, and our guide was fantastic. Just super friendly, told us about Skagway, told us what we were seeing as we were going, talked us through what was happening up at, customs. And then when we got up into Yukon and stopped at Carcross, just, he would stop, every, 20, 30 minutes, there'd be something else to see, just, these lakes, and there's a desert up there. And so we really had a great trip. Absolutely beautiful, and I think I probably have more pictures from that excursion than from anywhere else on our cruise.
I kind of like the idea of that. I've never really heard about the renting a van. Most people talk about the train, but having that your own guide like that, it kind of gives you a little bit more one-on-one interaction where you can really learn more, ask those questions that you want to ask, because you've got that one-on-one, kind of smaller look at things. Yeah,
it had that more personal touch. Mm-hmm. He got to learn our kids what types of things might be interesting to them. He said, hey, if we can see a bear, that'd be great. He said, all right, I'll see. He couldn't order up a bear, but he could certainly right. He could keep his eye out more. And when we did see one, he stopped. We pulled over, and then within 3 minutes, 5 or 6 other cars stopped behind us, because obviously there's something there. But so that was pretty cool, and just great person that we were with, and he could talk us through, look, you're going to see these 4 different ecosystems, and we could learn more about it. And it was pretty educational too.
So from Skagway, you guys are on to your big day, seeing glaciers up in Glacier Bay. This is one place where Disney does not go. I'm not exactly sure why they don't go into Glacier Bay. I know Glacier Bay limits how many cruise ships can go up in there each day and each year. But so on Disney, they usually have a naturalist on board that does some commentary while you're going up Tracy Arm. What did Norwegian do as far as your day at Glacier Bay? Yeah.
I think you're right. They must limit it, and I think the Blisses last year did not go into Glacier Bay, and I was just guessing that was they didn't have the right permits or permission yet to get into the queue. But they brought on a park ranger. They make a quick pit stop, and actually I think it's not even a stop. A boat tenders up to the ship, and park rangers get on, and they talk you through the whole morning. And so most of the time announcements throughout the ship were only in the hallways, but this was the one time where what the park ranger was talking about was announced even in your rooms, and or maybe it was on the TV, but you could hear it everywhere throughout the whole ship. So this was probably our favorite day. Now, it's hard to say, there's so many good days, but seeing it was really great. So the park ranger got on early. He said, look, we're heading up. You can see some things off to the sides, but he really kind of prepped us for what to expect, what glaciers are, what they look like, how they can be different, how they created that whole area, and then told us what we were going to be seeing, then talked us through it as we were seeing it. That was great. The ranger just was, really friendly, nice guy. Later on, he would go out and, kind of mingle with people, and so you could kind of go up and talk to him to the extent, there are a lot of people, but if you can get his time, he was, really happy to answer questions, clearly passionate about the area. And they talked about, why they, want to make sure trash goes over the edge, how they're really trying to preserve the area as much as they can. And so they, clearly are passionate about this beautiful area. That was a really great way for them to run it, I thought, because you learned a lot about it, but you could still just, you could any window or deck you could get onto just had amazing views. And I think, I talked a little bit about the big observation area in the front of the Bliss. Everyone talked about how it's so great to see Alaska from there, but I think that's geared towards when the weather can be so cold. Well, it was so warm that I think everyone was out on the decks for this. They opened up the very forward of the ship. They opened it up during the Glacier Bay tour, so people, just hundreds of people poured out there so they could kind of get out as close to the glacier as they could. So it was pretty spectacular. And then you saw Marjorie Glacier was, for us, the highlight, although there were many other beautiful glaciers. But that's just this, if you think of glacier and you look it up on Google or Wikipedia, that's what you're going to see. And there it was. You just come up really close, and just amazing, just a spectacular day. It's really the morning. I think by 11 or noon, we were heading back out of Glacier Bay, and the park ranger hops off the ship. And then after that, it's pretty much just a day at sea at that point.
Not to dwell on this too much, but did they do anything special with the food at all? Did they have like kind of halibut, salmon, that type of stuff on board, as you're kind of experiencing Alaska as well?
I don't remember that. Every day they would have a special that I don't know why, but they'd really advertise it throughout the ship. Tonight's special is this or that. And we're going to eat at your restaurant, so there's really no options. So I'm not sure, but I don't remember if, Glacier Bay Day or when they got up to Juneau, were they doing, salmon or halibut, or are they doing something special? That doesn't sound familiar, but it's possible. But I just don't remember that.
That's okay. I know it's kind of a weird segue when you're talking about beautiful glaciers, but Disney in the past used to always do a barbecue up on deck. So you're like eating you're having salmon and some reindeer sausage and that type of stuff as you're looking at the glaciers. I always thought that was kind of cool. But I've heard that maybe they don't do that every time now. But anyways, so just an amazing day in Glacier Bay. I've never actually been there. I've seen it from the air flying over it. But wow, just an amazing opportunity to see that, huh, Chris?
Yeah, that's one of those things that if you're picking an itinerary, and I guess you said Disney doesn't do it. I mean, if you love DCL, then you should do DCL. But if you're open to itinerary and you're looking at different cruise lines, I would certainly take a look at ones that go to Glacier Bay, because it was certainly the highlight. It was certainly one of the highlights of our trip to be able to see that.
Well, perfect. Well, from Glacier Bay, you guys making your way back down south again. You stop in Ketchikan. What did you guys have planned there?
So for Ketchikan, similar, we looked around at what to do, and we'd never been there. But of the towns, the ports we stopped in, Ketchikan just is such a quaint, charming town, little boardwalks, throughout it. You could really just spend the day, I guess, maybe half a day just walking around there and just looking at this amazingly, charming town. And so we did that. But what we actually started off the morning with, we found one of these float plane companies. We kind of I don't know if we chartered it, but we scheduled it. Ended up just being a 6-person plane, and it went through the Misty Fjords. And so that was maybe a 2-hour trip we did. They actually fly through the Misty Fjords. We landed on the water, do a water landing, and we all got out of the plane and kind of walked around the edges to see it. And man, that when I keep saying Glacier Bay was one of our favorites, this is the other one that just blew my mind, how amazing it was and how, untouched by civilization it was. You're just out there and there's nobody, there's nothing. And just the amount of nature and how quiet it was. You have these, mountains and trees, and then you see this water. It just looked like black glass. It was so still, nothing. I've never seen anything quite like it. So, really give a lot of credit to that company, and I know there's several of them, and it was a bit of a convincing job, because shortly before our trip, there were a lot of these news stories about these planes having accidents, and there was some loss of life in some of them, and so we were a little nervous about, hey, what do we expect? And I guess as a pilot, look, these are safe, but there's always this risk of what happens, or what about the other guy? Because in Alaska, I think a lot of getting around is on these planes or by boat. They're much more common than, say, where I am in Minnesota. People aren't flying float planes everywhere, but up there, that's just a way for a lot of people to get around. So it's much more common. But for us, it was still just, we're a little nervous, but I'm really glad we did it. And it was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, especially in Southeast, there are no roads between most of these cities, so that's the only way you're going to get around is either through plane or boats. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a major way of life. And, you know, some of the guys I've worked with that grew up in Alaska, I mean, having a plane to them was like you and I having a car or maybe a snowmobile up in Minnesota. It was just a way to get around, you know, kind of experience. You know, go fishing, go hunting, or whatever else is just kind of a mode of transportation. And you're right, they did have I know they have had one accident up there this year, and it does happen, but overall I think the safety record is really good. We took a helicopter in Juneau, and I mean, I'm with you. I was a little nervous taking it. Our whole family's on it, but man, what an experience. We took it up and we landed on the Taku Glacier. And if you can, I know it's a little pricey to do these excursions. We saved up and that was our big splurge for ours. But getting out there and seeing the countryside like you guys got to do is just amazing if you could do it.
Yeah, this was kind of a splurge for us also. But yeah, like you said, I mean, there's just such a unique way to see these locations up there. So we're really glad we did it. And we felt really safe. Our pilot was great, very serious, you know, ex-military. I guess for a lot of pilots, that's where they start off. And he was super friendly, got to know the kids. But when it came down to safety and flying the plane, he was very down to business. So we were very comforted by him.
Yeah, I think that they did a really good job over there. And just unfortunately, sometimes things do happen. You know, the one thing I guess we really didn't talk about, you guys had a balcony. What were your thoughts cruising up through the Inside Passage as you kind of head down towards Victoria? Did you guys spend time in the balcony? And what were your thoughts just of the scenery overall?
I know a lot of people say, if you're going to get a balcony, Alaska cruises are, you know, a good time to do it just because you're out a lot. And I think it probably depends a little bit on how the weather is. If it's really cold, you might not want to be out there because when you're booking along, it can get windy out there. So there were a few days when it was a bit breezy just because of, you know, the clip we were going at. But for the most part, our weather was absolutely amazing. I mean, we had 70s. I think we broke 80s some days. I mean, it was just like a summer day. So we did spend a lot of time on our balcony, and especially going through the Inside Passage there. We were holding out hope to see, you know, an orca one last chance as we were heading down to Victoria. We didn't, but yeah, just the scenery and be able to be outside. And, you know, as we slowed down in the evening, you know, we could just go out and, you know, have a glass of wine or, you know, get some snacks out there. And our whole family would be out there in the, you know, we had a good sized balcony. It was, you know, lots of space, and we were sort of towards the front and, you know, starboard, actually port. Sorry, you just get kind of these great views, what's ahead of you, and then you could still see, you know, alongside and along back of the ship. So for us, it ended up really being worth it to have a balcony, and we spent a lot of time out there. And I've heard this whole summer there's been really warm weather up in Alaska, so it seems like a good time to go and good season for people who are up there.
It amazes me when we went up through there how close you are to the land, because the majority of your cruises, you know, are like out to the Caribbean or whatever else. You know, you're pretty far away from it, except for when you're coming into port, and just be moving along and watching that scenery as you go. It's just amazing, I thought. So.
Yeah, it's surreal because you're in this huge ship, but you're fairly close, and you can see both sides. You're like, wait, there's land right there. Oh, there's a little town. You can just see it all. It's right there.
Yeah.
But that's one of the cool parts about that Inside Passage stretch there.
So you guys head down your last days in Victoria. Was that a short stop, or what did you guys do there?
Yeah, I think it got in 7, maybe not even until 8 p.m. So yeah, it's just kind of that obligatory international port stop, and I think it stayed there till midnight. We didn't stay out that late, but we gave our 2 younger kids a pass on this one. They really wanted to hit the kids club one last time, and that was the last night. And I wasn't sure if it would be a great port for them, so we didn't plan anything. We walked in. You can walk from the port. I forget the distance. I think it's a little over a mile, but the weather was so nice, and you said, hey, let's just take a walk. So my wife, 2 oldest kids, and I, we just walked into Victoria, and I was just super impressed. What a charming, beautiful town. We came in along the Parliament building there, that big government building, and is it the Fairmont or the Fairmont Empress Hotel, just kind of a big old hotel there.
It's the Victoria. Is that right?
I mean, Victoria. Right? Yeah. Oh, that could be. Yeah, just one of the big old hotel, and then we have some friends who are from Canada. They said, "Oh, you got to go to this ice cream place. I'm gonna butcher the name, but I think it's Chocolat Favori." And we're like, "Well, there are lots of ice cream shops." And we get to that one, and the line is out the door. So we're like, "Okay, this is clearly the place to be." So kind of just walked around, experienced some of the downtown area. Just a charming, friendly, welcoming town. And by that point, we were getting kind of tired, wanted to get back, so we just grabbed a cab. well, this guy was just this stereotypical what you think. Canadians are all super friendly. Well, man, this guy is like, I'm going to charge you the same, but you're from out of town. I have to take you around this park and show you this, and I'll show you about that building. And it was kind of like our own tour guide, and kind of like this 50. It was probably a 5-minute cab ride, but 15 minutes. He just kind of drove us around and talked us through the town and the city. So it was really kind of a really great way to end our short little excursion into Victoria. But so for us, I'm glad we didn't do an excursion. We didn't need it, and I didn't want to have to get on a bus and follow the pre-designated trip. But we had just a fun time exploring it on our own. All told, we were there maybe about 2 hours or so, roughly, but it was long enough to kind of walk in, walk around, get some ice cream, and get a leisurely cab ride back from the friendliest cab driver ever.
No, that's the perfect thing to do in Victoria, and you're right. It's the Fairmont Empress. That's the name of the hotel.
Oh, okay,
there.
okay.
Yeah, they have a great tea there if anybody's in. But getting there as late as you guys did, that's not really an option for that. Right. But if anybody ever goes up there and is into tea, they have a world-renowned tea at the Fairmont Empress there in Victoria. But yeah, what a great way to spend it. Just a couple hours. Getting off the ship and wandering around the town. It's just a beautiful little town. It's British. It's kind of that British theme, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely it felt like it's from another world, just kind of plunked down in there, and oh yeah, never gets that cold, never get that much snow. I'm like, I have to retire here. This is such a great city.
Well, between the joke up there is it's the land of the newlyweds and the nearly dead. So a lot of people do go up there to retire. So you can jump over there from Vancouver really easily too. You can take a float plane. So if anybody's up there and wants to go over to Victoria, so if you're cruising on Disney. Disney doesn't stop in Victoria. They don't need to. But if you want to get over there, you can take a boat ride too. But they actually do float planes that go right over land, right in the harbor, like where the ships come in, like you did. And you can just spend a great day in Victoria. So from there, you guys are back to Seattle. How was disembarkation? Any problems there?
No, it was easy and very low stress. I mean, aside from the fact you're leaving the end of any cruise, you're kind of sad to see it go. But no, we were able to eat at our restaurant the night before. They sent, give a sheet of paper. Here's when different people are going to get off. And so because we were in the Haven, we had a little more flexibility. But I think it was going to be similar to Disney. Like, here's kind of your prearranged wait time to get off. The one difference was, unlike Disney, you don't have a home-based restaurant. So I think the buffet was probably open. We just ate at the Haven restaurant, had time to get back to our room, and then we as we're able to get off. They kind of take us off and let us get through customs all very fast. I don't think we waited that long. We brought our bags with us. I'm not a fan of trying to put our bags out the night before because I know I'm going to forget something or pack something that I needed. And so we just worried about that in the morning. But, relatively quick to get off and get through customs, maybe, 20 to 30 minutes all told. And from there, we just grabbed a car up to the airport and flew home. So kind of sad to see it all end so abruptly. Then you kind of see all these people coming to the ship they're about to get on. And you're like, oh, you're going to have a great time. But yeah, it was very, very easy and pretty well organized process they had.
So kind of finishing up here then, what, as a family talking about it, what were kind of your thoughts, like looking back on this cruise, thinking about Norwegian versus Disney? What were your thoughts and your kids' thoughts overall?
So everyone had a great trip, and if we could always do the Haven, which is not our situation, I might never cruise anyone else because that experience was so fantastic and the service was just first rate. But if it weren't for that, the ship is still beautiful, and I would absolutely recommend it because there's so much to see and do, and it's just a unique, well-designed, thought-out ship. But I if we were doing our next cruise, I might go back to Disney just because there is so geared towards families, and that's still where we're at, even though our kids are getting a little older. On a Disney cruise, you really don't need to worry, is that show going to be appropriate for kids? Or, is that comedian going to be, okay for kids? You really just know that's the focus of it. Not that there wasn't family-friendly things on NCL. There certainly was. But you had to pay a little more attention to it. And there, certainly more of a mixed group. You're going to have more people there who are just going to party it up. And it was never a problem for us. But it just had a little bit of a different vibe. So, all told, lots of family can have a great time, and we absolutely did. But I think we would probably consider doing our next cruise on Disney. We don't have any current plans, but that would certainly be on our mind if we were going to do another cruise in the near future.
Well, I'm glad you and your family just had a great time on Norwegian. We've enjoyed the 2 cruises we've taken with Norwegian, and I think it's a great alternative to Disney for a lot of different reasons. If it fits your budget, fits your what sailing you want to do, and depending upon like what you said. Yeah, I agree totally with you. We haven't taken our kids with us, not that we wouldn't, but Disney's just easier with as far as a family goes for us right now. So yeah, thank you so much, Chris, for your time kind of sharing your experiences with this. Cruise not being in your itinerary, what is next for you guys?
We're still working on that. I think we have some family reunions we're working on, so I'm sure a cruise will work its way in there. I've been a little inspired just some of your discussion of some European cruises, so nothing is set at all, but I could imagine us trying to look at some of those down the road because that's something really unique, and we haven't done it yet, so I think that could be on our short list.
Yeah, with your family's kind of outgoing personality, I think you guys would really enjoy Europe. It's a lot to see. They're busier cruises. You're definitely not, kind of relaxing. Well, you can relax. That's not true. You can relax, but it's definitely busy days. But you get to see so much, and I think your kids would really enjoy it. So if that works into your itinerary, I think you guys would really enjoy it. Well, once again, thanks again, Chris, for coming on. And when you guys do get back on that next cruise, please reach out to us, let us know, and we'll have you back on, and we'll talk about where you guys end up.
Yeah, sounds great, Steve. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon, and take care.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You too. Bye.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Chris for coming back on and sharing his and his family's amazing experiences. They cruised up to Alaska on the beautiful Norwegian Bliss, and after hearing him talk about the Haven and some of the different activities on board Norwegian Cruise Line, it kind of intrigues me to kind of look at going back on NCL and maybe taking them up to Alaska at some time. So I hope these different episodes are really helping you out as far as sometimes it just doesn't work out price wise, or maybe as far as time or schedule, or just itinerary wise, to branch out and try a different cruise line. That's why we're bringing them to you, and I really appreciate Chris and all of the takes and all of his information that he's passed on to us about NCL and his trip up to Alaska. So between now and our next show, if you'd like to support our show, you can always do so over at patreon.com/DCL podcast. You can find out all the information over there. If you'd like to be part of our show and come on and share your experiences at either on Disney Cruise Line or Adventures by Disney, we would love to have you. You can reach out to me, Steve, at DCLpodcast.com, and we will set up a time to get you on as well so that you can relive those magical experiences that you and your family had, and we can share it with all of us out there so that all of us can learn from you and cruise a little smarter next time. So between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next vacation, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.